Hello everyone. Now moving on to section 2, we're going to be looking at poisonous weeds. So some background on poisonous weeds. So these are plants that emerge in the early spring before grasses begin to grow. So these can take advantage of cool, wet springs. So they, since it's cool and wet, other grasses usually aren't going to grow as well, but poisonous weeds for some reason will be able to thrive with this. And then so they're called poisonous weeds because they have the ability to poison anything that might consume them. So that can be livestock and that can even be people. And then so looking back at cool, wet springs or just emergence in the spring. So if livestock were to be turned out too early, poisoning could occur because this would be the only plant that they would be able to graze. And then so the poisonous effects that they have range from minor irritation and slightly lowered performance of the animals to severe cases where the animal is in distress and could actually die. So the first one we're going to look at is called leafy spurge. So this is a perennial and it spreads with creeping roots and seeds. So the roots can actually reach a depth of 15 feet, and so that they can reproduce with the roots. So it just creates this big, extensive root system that can be hard to control. And then with the seeds, they have an exploding seed capsule. So that just means seeds are inside this capsule. And then if something were to brush up against them, or if wind were to push it up against another plant, just the force of that contact will make the capsule open, and then the seeds will burst out of there and just be able to disperse in a greater area than if they were were to fall to the ground. And then with the leafy spurge, it produces a milky latex sap, which is what is toxic to animals. And so it is also highly invasive in many systems. And there is some biological control to this with some flea beetles and with targeted grazing by sheep and goats. So with this, the milky sap is not toxic to sheep and goats, but instead to cattle, just because of the basic digestive system, I guess, of the sheep and goats just being different from cattle. And so looking at it on a weed mount, we can see that it has these short, thin leaves, and then a cluster of yellow flowers at the top contain all those seeds. All right, the next one we're going to cover is called meadow death camas. So this is a perennial and it's related to lilies. It's in the lily family. So you can see that with this picture, it kind of looks like a lily if you're familiar with that. So it has long, slender leaves with like a waxy substance on the outer side of it. And then these originate from a bulb. So the bulb is below the ground, and that's where all the carbohydrate and just other storage, like food reserves, are located. And then for reproduction, it produces a long flower stalk. So it'll just produce one stalk, and then at the top is where this cluster of white flowers is going to be. So all parts of this plant are poisonous to all mammals, especially when the plant is younger. So like younger plants are even more toxic than older mature plants. One bulb can be fatal if consumed. And then so consumption of 2 to 6% of the body weight of the animal is likely to be fatal. And this is native to West North America, so it's actually not invasive. It's just native to this range, but it's considered a weed because of these characteristics that makes it not desirable in the eyes of a human because of just the toxic effects that it can have to cattle. So looking at it as a weed mount, you can see these long slender leaves with one central stalk. With this one kind of fell apart, but this one had a cluster of white flowers at the top. And then looking below ground, you can see the bulb down here with a little bit of root growth. All right, so now the last one on the poisonous weed list is the Plains larkspur. So this is a perennial. You'll usually see it growing in upper elevations up in like mountain areas. So if you go to like the Snowies, you'll usually see this really pretty purplish blue flower growing on the sides of the mountains. So these can be up to 2 feet tall with, like I said, the blue flowers, and they have early growth in the spring. So this is usually one flower that's quick to emerge. So you can usually get to see that color in the early spring. And it's most toxic to cattle. So this is with a substance called alkaloids. So the alkaloids will cause muscle weakness and paralysis to cattle. And then so that leads to secondary side effects like bloating and respiratory paralysis. And both of those things will lead to death of the animal. But you can also do targeted grazing with sheep, and goats are also resistant to the alkaloids that are found in this plant. So if you want to try to control for this with grazing, you'll want to use sheep or goats, but definitely do not use cattle because it will most likely be fatal to cattle. And then looking at this as a mount, you can see these on this, when it dried down, it kind of turned to like a purplish, bluish color, but they're kind of like a fuzzy little flower. And then it has these little clusters of long, kind of medium length, slender leaves, all kind of originating off of this one area. And then you can't really see the root system on here. Yeah, so just look for these purplish flowers and these clusters of these medium length, slender leaves. And that is the last of the poisonous weeds.